My husband had an affair with my sister, used my inheritance to buy her a house, and tried to take my children, so I orchestrated his complete downfall and rebuilt my life while he lost everything. I'm still in shock as I type this. Even though it's been almost a year since my entire life imploded, some days I wake up thinking it was all a nightmare. But it wasn't. And what happened next? Well, I'm still processing whether I went too far. But when someone systematically destroys your life, your trust, your family, and tries to take your children, there comes a point where you stop being a victim and start playing chess. This is going to be long. I need to get it all out. 6 years ago, my father passed away unexpectedly. He was wealthy, not billionaire wealthy, but comfortable enough to leave me a substantial inheritance of just over $1.2 million. My husband Mark and I had been married for 8 years at that point, with twin girls who were 6. We had a good life in the suburbs of Chicago. Mark worked in finance, made decent money, and I was a part-time graphic designer who mostly stayed home with our daughters. When I received the inheritance, Mark suggested we put it into a joint investment account for our future. He had the financial background, and I trusted him completely. We agreed to use a small portion, $200,000, as a down payment on a larger house in a better school district, invest the bulk of it, and save some for the girls' college funds. Looking back, the red flags were there, but love truly is blind. About 2 years after my father's death, my younger sister Jen moved to our city after a bad breakup. She was always the wild one, the one who couldn't hold down a job or maintain a stable relationship. I loved her, but we were opposites. Still, family is family. I convinced Mark we should let her stay with us until she got on her feet. He was surprisingly enthusiastic about helping her. Too enthusiastic, as it turns out. 6 months ago, I was using Mark's laptop to order birthday presents for the girls. He had forgotten to log out of his email. I wasn't snooping, I swear I'm not that person, but a subject line caught my eye: house closing documents. I opened it out of curiosity, assuming it was some investment property he was surprising me with. What I found changed everything. The email contained closing documents for a $450,000 house in the next town over. The buyer was listed as Jennifer Mitchell, my sister. The funds had come from our joint investment account, which contained most of my inheritance. There was a thread of emails between Mark and Jen discussing how to keep this hidden from me, with phrases like "Amy doesn't need to know and we'll figure out the money story later." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely scroll. Through more emails, I discovered they'd been having an affair for over a year. The house wasn't the only thing. He'd been transferring smaller amounts, $5,000 here, $10,000 there, to a separate account they shared. In total, he diverted nearly $600,000 of my inheritance to my sister in their shared accounts. I felt physically sick. I ran to the bathroom and threw up until there was nothing left. Then I sat on the cold tile floor for what felt like hours, trying to make sense of it. My husband. My sister. My father's money. It was like the 3 most important pillars of my life had crumbled simultaneously. I'm not proud of what I did next. I forwarded all the emails to myself, took screenshots, downloaded bank statements, and then carefully put everything back exactly as I found it. Then I called my best friend Sarah and asked if the girls and I could stay with her for a few days. I told Mark I needed space after an argument. We had fought the previous night about something trivial. How ironic. At Sarah's, I fell apart. For 3 days, I barely functioned. Sarah took care of the girls while I oscillated between catatonic grief and blinding rage. On the 4th day, something shifted. The fog of betrayal began to lift, and in its place came a clarity I'd never experienced before. I would not let them destroy me. I would not let them take everything. I would be strategic, methodical, patient. First, I needed professional help. I contacted a divorce attorney, the most ruthless one in Chicago, according to Google reviews. During our consultation, I laid out everything I'd discovered. She was confident we had a solid case for financial fraud, since he'd misappropriated my inheritance without consent. She advised me to gather more evidence before confronting Mark or Jen, and to secure my remaining assets immediately. That day, I opened new bank accounts in my name only and transferred the small amount of personal savings I had. I also contacted the investment firm managing our joint account and explained the situation. They froze the account pending legal resolution, which meant Mark couldn't withdraw any more money. That night, Mark called in a panic. "Amy, what the hell? I tried to make a transfer and our investment account is frozen." I forced myself to sound normal. "Really? That's weird. Maybe call them tomorrow to sort it out. How are things at home? Girls and I are having a great time with Sarah, might stay another few days to let you have some me time." He sounded relieved. Oh, yeah, take your time. Everything's fine here. I bet it was. I later found out he'd been having Jen over to our house while I was gone. For the next 2 weeks, I played the role of unsuspecting wife. I returned home with the girls, acted normal, went through the motions. All while my attorney built our case and I gathered more evidence. I installed spyware on our home computer. I checked phone records. I hired a private investigator who documented their meetings, photographed them entering her new house, the house bought with my money. Meanwhile, I secured copies of all financial records from the past 5 years. I documented every asset we owned. I recorded conversations where Mark explained that the investment account was frozen due to routine security checks and how he was working to resolve it. I pretended to believe every word. Edit: a lot of people are asking if what I did with the spyware and recording was legal. My attorney advised me on what was permissible in our state for gathering evidence in a divorce involving financial fraud. The spyware was on a shared family computer, and I only recorded conversations I was part of in a one-party consent state. The PI did everything legally. I was careful not to cross legal boundaries while still protecting myself. The PI delivered the final blow 3 weeks in, photographs of Mark and Jen together with my children, viewing what appeared to be private school brochures. Later that night, I found searches on our home computer for how to get full custody from uninvolved mother and proving parental alienation. They weren't just stealing my money and betraying my trust, they were plotting to take my children. That was my breaking point. The moment when any guilt or hesitation about my plan vanished entirely. They had declared total war. And I was ready to respond in kind. I set a date for confrontation, 2 days before my next scheduled meeting with my attorney, when all the legal paperwork would be ready. The night before, I couldn't sleep. I paced our bedroom while Mark snored peacefully beside me, oblivious that his carefully constructed house of cards was about to collapse. That morning after Mark left for work, I called Jen and asked her to come over, saying I needed to talk about planning a surprise party for Mark. She arrived looking nervous but trying to hide it. I invited her to sit at our kitchen island, the same place where we'd shared countless sisterly conversations over wine. I know everything, I said calmly, placing a folder of photos on the counter between us. I know about the affair. I know about the house. I know about the money, my money. And I know about the plans for my children. The color drained from her face. She started to speak, but I held up my hand. Don't bother lying. I have all the evidence right here. I tapped the folder. What I want to know is why. Why my husband? Why take my money? Why try to take my children? What did I ever do to deserve this level of betrayal from my own sister? She burst into tears, those manipulative tears I'd seen her use since childhood. It just happened, Amy. We didn't mean for it to go this far. We fell in love. And the money, Mark said it was joint money, that you had agreed to help me. I didn't know he was lying. And the plans to take my children? Was that just love too? She looked genuinely shocked. What? No, we never. I slid the pie photos across the counter. Her researching private schools with Mark and my daughters. Her face crumpled. That was Mark's idea, she whispered. He said you were too preoccupied with your grief over Dad to properly parent them. That they needed stability. Something inside me snapped. Get out of my house, I said, my voice eerily calm. You have exactly 24 hours to transfer the deed of that house to my name, or I'm sending evidence of your fraud to the police, your employer, and every member of our family. 24 hours, Jen. She left in tears, calling Mark frantically as she pulled out of the driveway. An hour later, Mark came home, face flushed with anger. What the hell did you say to Jen? She's hysterical. I smiled. Actually smiled. I simply told her I know everything. About the affair, the house, my stolen inheritance, and your plans for our children. He switched tactics immediately, his face softening. Amy, you've misunderstood. Yes, Jan and I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. But the money was just a loan to help her after everything she's been through. And there were never any plans for the children. You're paranoid. Maybe you need to talk to someone about your grief. I cut him off by opening my laptop and playing a recording of him on the phone with Jen, explicitly discussing how to get Amy out of the picture regarding custody. His face turned ashen. The investment account is frozen because I froze it, I said. Divorce papers will be filed tomorrow. You have stolen over $500,000 of my inheritance through fraud, and I have all the documentation to prove it. You will be lucky if you don't face criminal charges. He switched from denial to anger in an instant. You'll never prove it. And no judge will give the girls to an unstable mother who spies on her husband. I'll take everything, Amy. Everything. I laughed, actually laughed. You've already tried to take everything, Mark. And you failed. Now get out of my house. Your house? This is my house too. Actually, no. The deed is in my name only, if you remember. We put the down payment for my inheritance but kept it in my name for tax purposes, your suggestion, ironically. So legally, you have no claim to it. My attorney will be contacting you tomorrow. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard a picture fell off the wall, a family portrait from happier times. As it shattered on the floor, I felt a strange sense of finality. That night, I explained to my girls in age-appropriate terms that Dad and I were having serious problems and would be separating. They cried, of course. It broke my heart. But I promised them that no matter what, both Mom and Dad loved them and would always be their parents. I didn't mention Jen. They didn't need to know that part yet. Update: the next few weeks were a whirlwind. Mark hired an aggressive attorney and tried to fight for joint custody and half of all assets, including the house. But my evidence was overwhelming. The judge was particularly disturbed by the documented theft of my inheritance and the custody plotting. The legal battle was ugly, but shorter than I expected. The court froze all our assets during proceedings. Mark was ordered to account for every penny of my inheritance he had misappropriated. When he couldn't, the judge found him in contempt. My attorney was brilliant, methodically dismantling every claim Mark made, presenting evidence of his financial fraud, infidelity, and conspiracy to alienate me from my children. Meanwhile, Jen did transfer the house deed to me, not out of remorse, but fear of legal consequences. I immediately put it on the market. She begged me not to leave her homeless, the irony apparently lost on her. I suggested she ask Mark to help her find a place to live. Then came a twist I hadn't expected. 3 more women contacted me after hearing about our divorce through mutual acquaintances. Mark had apparently been unfaithful throughout our entire marriage, not just with Jen. One woman had evidence he'd promised to leave me for her years ago. Another had texts showing he'd used some of my inheritance to take her on a vacation he told me was a business trip. I provided all this to my attorney, who used it to further establish his pattern of deception. By the time we reached final negotiations, Mark was drowning. The judge awarded me full custody with Mark having supervised visitation only. The family home plus 75% of all marital assets. A judgment for $600,000 against Mark for the misappropriated inheritance. My attorney's fees to be paid by Mark. But my revenge didn't stop with the legal victory. Remember, they had tried to destroy my entire life, my family, financial security, and relationship with my children. The consequences needed to match the crime. I sent a detailed account of Mark's financial fraud to his employer, an investment firm with strict ethics policies. He was terminated within a week. His professional licenses came under review. No financial institution would touch him with allegations of personal financial fraud on his record. I also reached out to the parents at my daughter's school, where Mark had been class dad and on the PTA board, with a carefully worded explanation of why we were divorcing. Not for sympathy, but so they'd understand why he would no longer be involved in school activities and why playdates at our house would be different. I was factual and unemotional, but the impact was immediate. Mark's social standing in our community evaporated overnight. As for Jen, I didn't need to do much. When I sold her house, she had nowhere to go. Mark, now unemployed and hemorrhaging money and legal fees, couldn't help her. She tried moving back to our hometown, but I had already spoken with our extended family, showing them evidence of their betrayal. No one would take her in. She ended up moving 3 states away to live with a cousin, the only family member who still spoke to her. Mark's life fell apart completely. Without his job, he couldn't pay the judgment against him or even his own rent. His new apartment was a studio in a bad part of town. He missed several supervised visitations with the girls because he couldn't afford the gas. When he did see them, he spent the time trying to get them to spy on me or convince me to take him back. The court-appointed supervisor documented everything, further damaging his case for expanded visitation rights. About 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Mark showed up at my door, unannounced and reeking of alcohol. He oscillated between begging for forgiveness and threatening me. I recorded the entire interaction on my phone while refusing to let him inside. When he wouldn't leave, I called the police. He was arrested for public intoxication and trespassing, which violated the terms of our custody agreement. His visitation rights were suspended indefinitely. The last I heard, he was living in his car after being evicted from his apartment. He's been calling mutual friends asking for loans. No one will help him. These are the same friends who watched him brag about his career successes for years while he was secretly stealing from me and cheating with my sister. The same friends who listened to him complain about me being emotional after my father died. They've all seen the evidence. They know exactly who he is now. Am I proud of what I did? Not exactly. Taking satisfaction in another person's downfall isn't something I was raised to do. But do I regret it? Not for 1 second. They declared war on me, tried to take everything, my money, my children, my dignity. They assumed I was weak, that I would crumble. They were wrong. I've had therapy throughout this process. My therapist says what I did wasn't revenge, it was justice. I enforced consequences for actions that would have otherwise gone unpunished. I protected myself and my children from people who had proven they would hurt us without hesitation. The girls are doing better now. We've established a new normal. They ask about their dad sometimes, and I never speak ill of him to them, despite everything. That's a line I won't cross. They're innocent in all this, and they deserve to form their own opinions as they grow older. I simply tell them that Dad made some very poor choices that hurt our family, and he needs to work on himself before he can be a good parent to them. As for me, I've started my own graphic design business, which is thriving. I've reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my marriage. I'm dating again, slowly and cautiously. The house that Mark bought Jen sold for a profit, which went straight into my daughter's college funds. Sometimes at night, when the girls are asleep and the house is quiet, I think about how close I came to losing everything, how they almost succeeded in their plan to leave me broke and childless while they built a new life with my money. In those moments, I feel a cold satisfaction knowing that instead, they lost everything while I rebuilt my life stronger than before. Maybe that makes me petty. Maybe it makes me vindictive. Or maybe it just makes me a woman who refused to be a victim. Final update, it's been almost a year since everything happened. I didn't expect this post to get so much attention. To answer some common questions. Yes, the girls are in therapy too. They're doing really well now. Kids are resilient, and having a stable home with clear boundaries has helped them adjust. No, Mark still hasn't paid the judgment against him. My attorney says we may never recover the full amount, but we've garnished what we can from his occasional temporary jobs. Jen reached out recently, sending a long email about forgiveness and family. I didn't respond. Some bridges can't be rebuilt, and I have no desire to try. To those asking if I'm taking this too far by not helping Mark financially for the sake of the children, he tried to take my children away from me using my own father's money. He called me an unfit mother while sleeping with my sister in our bed. He would have left me with nothing if he could have. Consequences aren't revenge, they're the natural result of one's actions. I've moved on with my life. I'm seeing someone new who treats me with respect and honesty. My business continues to grow. The girls are thriving in school. We're planning our first real vacation since everything happened, just the three of us. If there's one thing I've learned through all this, it's that you never really know someone completely. But you can know yourself. You can decide what you'll accept and what you won't. You can choose to stand up when the world expects you to fall down. I chose to stand. And from here, the view is much clearer.